characters, incidents, names, and situations used in this story are fictitious. The resemblance to any person living or dead is purely coincidental. The following video contains some horror elements and suitable for a mature audience, 16 plus. This channel and video is not for kids.
Hello friends, I am Aryan and welcome to our channel Midnight Horror Stories, where you get to hear true and scary ghost stories. In our channel, you will get to hear true and scary stories every Tuesday and Saturday. But before starting the story, all the friends who have come to this channel for the first time, please subscribe to the channel, and if you like the story, then definitely introduce yourself in the comment section. Then, let's do not take much time and start our story quickly.
Hello friends! Our story today is about a man from Gujarat whose name is Vishal. So let's now hear this story from Vishal's point of view. Hello friends, my name is Vishal and I am from Gujarat. I am a doctor by profession and I also write a little bit here and there. But the story that I have brought for you today is the story of such an incident. Despite being a science student, I never even dreamed that something like this could ever happen to me. But believe me, when that thing happened to me, at that time, science had also failed in front of all those things, and in the end I had to accept that ghosts, witches, vampires, such things also exist somewhere in the world, and once a person gets caught in their clutches, then what can happen to him? You and I can't even imagine it. Because that's what has happened to me too. And today I have brought you this story. Actually, it was at that time when my first posting was in a hospital in Jaipur city of Rajasthan. Although the hospital was located a little further away from Jaipur city, it was very big and spacious in appearance. Looking at its building, it seemed as if this hospital had been a building of something else, not a hospital before. But when I reached there on the first day to join my duty, as soon as I reached inside the four walls of that hospital, I was the most successful. First meeting is with a ward boy there named Raghu, because when I was getting down from my car and going towards the corridor in front of the hospital, suddenly I see Raghu. I didn't know his name until then, but from the ward boy dress he was wearing, I knew it was a hospital man. That's why I call him from a long distance and say, "Hey brother, please come here." As soon as I say this, he first looks around and then walks very fast towards me and approaches me. He reaches me and says, "Tell me sir, what is the matter?" So as soon as he told me this, I told him that I am not brother, but your senior, and today is my first posting in this hospital. Now as soon as I say this, he smiles a little and then says, "Oh sir, I didn't know about your coming. Because of this, I did not recognize him." Now after such things happened, when I went inside that hospital building for the first time with Raghu, as soon as I reached inside, I saw that there were a lot of old-fashioned doors inside it, and looking at those doors, it seemed as if this hospital was not a hospital, but a hotel. Still, I don't ask anyone so much about all these things and quietly start doing the work for which I came there. It had been almost 2 to 3 weeks since I had joined duty, and in these days I had come to know a lot about the staff of that hospital and the rest of it. But there was still one thing that was out of my sight and which I was fully aware of. Actually, because I was a surgeon, then whenever there was an accidental case or suicide case, I had to go to the mortuary to do the post-mortem of the body of those people, and the mortuary of that hospital was not present next to the hospital or in any other place. That entire mortuary was used as a mortuary. Now once there was an accidental case and the person who had an accident in that case, he had died, so I was asked by my senior to conduct a post-mortem of the body. Now was it a coincidence or something else? That whenever I went for the post-mortem of a body, every time I met the ward boy on the first day, whose name was Raghu, his duty was assigned to me. So like every time, this time too when Raghu and I were passing down the stairs of that basement, while coming down the stairs, I see that like every time, this time there were no 3 doors in that basement. Rather, today I could also see a 4th door next to those 3 doors. But before that, whenever I used to come to that mortuary for the post-mortem of anyone, there used to be a lot of big boxes kept in that place. But today, not a single box of them was there. And today I could see a big door behind the place where he used to keep the box, on which 4 numbers were written on it, just like the other 3 rooms. That is, those rooms were numbered. The first of which is the second and third rooms, then used as mortuary. It was taken. It was the first time I had seen the 4th room that day. And when I saw that room for the first time, I felt very strange when I looked at its door. Because that door was not closed in a normal way like the rest of the doors.
Rather, there was a big lock on top of it, and despite being locked, it was completely tied with iron chains from the outside. Along with this, some wood was also put on top of it by the kill. Seeing the frills of all those things, it seemed as if there was someone inside the room that no one wanted to let out, and that is why that door was so well packed and locked. I was just going down the stairs and observing all these things when suddenly the lights on the ceiling started flickering. For a moment, as soon as those lights started flickering, for the first time in my life, I felt a little nervous. But then, Ward Boy Raghu's voice comes from the back. "What happened, sir?" So as soon as he says this, I say that, no, nothing. Saying this, Raghu and I enter room number 3 to conduct the post-mortem of the man. But when I was doing the post-mortem of that man in that room number 3, at that time, I felt as if the wall of that room was adjacent to room number 4. Someone from the other side of that wall is scratching that wall. Because after listening very closely, I could hear a strange shrapnel sound from the other side of that wall. And along with the sound of that shrapnel, there was also a strange moaning. Someone is moaning in pain. Now for a moment, I tried to ignore that. But when the same thing started happening again and again, after doing the post-mortem when I was returning upstairs, I asked Raghu that, "Hey man, Raghu, today I do not understand one thing, that on the rest of the days, there were so many boxes outside that number 4 room, and today all those boxes are missing from here. But the thing I see after those boxes are removed is that the door to that room has been locked so well, if someone does not open it by mistake, then what is the reason behind it?" Now as soon as he hears this from my mouth, he starts to get a little flustered and tells me that, "Sir, it is better if you do not talk about all these things, and not at all by staying here. Now go up quickly." After saying this to me, Raghu starts climbing upwards ahead of me. Now that he started to panic in this way, then I also thought that whatever it is, he will ask after going upstairs. But only when I followed Raghu through the basement of the mortuary, as it started coming upwards from where it was being used, for a moment I felt as if someone had knocked on the door of room number 4 right in front of the stairs. It's like someone is trying to open that door. Now for a moment when I feel this thing, I quickly turn around and look back. And as I look back, I see that there was a little glass on top of the door above the room at that time. It happened. And from inside that mirror, I can see that when I turned around, there was a strange light flickering inside that room at the same time. Now looking at that thing, at first I thought that maybe there must be an old bad bulb in that room that is blinking in this way. But before I could think or understand anything else, Raghu comes back down the stairs. And this time, without saying anything, grabs my hand and starts dragging me upstairs. Now suddenly seeing this kind of behavior with his seniors, I felt very strange. That's why as soon as I climb those stairs and reach the upper floor, I shake my hand from his hand and say to him, "Raghu, what is this rudeness? How can you catch me in this way?" But instead of answering this, he tells me that, "Sir, you should not look at that room again so closely even by mistake. Because I don't want the same thing that happened to other people to happen to you." Now he was saying this with a lot of stuttering, as if he was imagining something while saying that thing. And because of that imagination, his tongue was very hesitant while speaking. However, at that time I tried very hard to find out the reason behind this thing from him. But he left without saying anything to me. And this thing happened not once, but many times, that whenever he was with me in my cabin or anywhere, I would try to ask him about room number 4 in that basement. But as soon as I started such a thing, he would make some excuse and leave. But once the dead body of a man comes who lost his life in an accident, and I had to do his post-mortem. But that day, by chance, Raghu was on leave, so there was no other staff to accompany me to the post-mortem. Because it was night time, and by that time the rest of the staff of the hospital had almost gone to their house, and the only people who had night shifts were present in the hospital at that time. Now after hearing this, many of you must be thinking that this should not happen at all. While doing the post-mortem, there is definitely some other person present with the doctor. But let me tell you here that all these things happen only in those cases where the corpses are not unclaimed and who have a family. But the corpse that came for post-mortem that night was an unclaimed corpse whose family was not left after the accident. That is why the system is a little careless in dealing with such things. So in such a situation, I had to go alone to do the post-mortem of that corpse that day. And because the in charge of the hospital, I couldn't even refuse it. That's why, like every time when I started going towards the basement with a mask on my face and a flashlight in my hand and the rest of the essentials, I did not think for a moment what was going to happen to me there today. Actually, that day when I came down those stairs and reached the basement, I saw that the lock and chain that used to be on the door of room number 4 for the rest of the day was missing from there today. And that door was slightly inward open also, from which a dusty light is coming out. Now, seeing this thing at first, I am forced to think a lot about how this can happen. Who opened the door that was completely closed for so many days? I was just thinking that I heard the same sound from inside the room that I used to hear many times while doing the postmortem inside the room next to it. That is, the same sound of scratching the walls and moaning strangely was now heard again by me. When I heard that voice, I wondered whose voice was coming from the room that had been closed for so long. At first, I thought that maybe a dog or cat-like animal had entered and now it couldn't find a way out. Thinking of this in my mind, I start walking towards the cellar number 4 with the help of the light of the torch in my hand. But as soon as I went to him and opened his door, I was stunned to see the view inside. Actually, I could see that as soon as the door opened, there is a structure on the front with the corpse of a woman on top. But that woman does not look ordinary at all. Because looking at it, it seemed as if it had just been brought here for a moment. So looking at that thing, I wonder if I have been sent for a postmortem. But then again, one thing comes to my mind, that if I had been sent for the postmortem, then its name and photo would have been attached in the file. But the file had the name and photo of another man, and it was a woman. I was just thinking about it when I looked at her and saw the clothes the woman was wearing. That is to say, the clothes on top of that corpse were a bridal dress, and seeing that corpse in those clothes, it seemed as if the corpse was fresh, as if he had died just a few hours ago. But looking at his face, I could understand very well that he had probably died of suffocation, because his lips were wide open and what was his tongue was slightly protruding outwards. Along with this, the eyes that he had were completely sticking upwards, and looking at those eyes, it seemed as if someone had forcibly closed his eyes after death, because it still looked more than half open. Now, while watching all this, I had forgotten that the ward boy Raghu had completely forbidden me to enter this room number 4. And why do I see this room open today when I'm here alone? And after all, the corpse lying on top of this structure belongs to which woman? All of it things were not coming to mind at that time. That's why I slowly pulled towards the corpse like an unknown person, because I wanted to go to him and see why the corpse was kept in the room that had been closed for so long. But as soon as I moved my steps forward and got a little closer to that corpse, suddenly the door of that room from the back door quickly closes. Now, as soon as there is a sound of the door closing of that room from the back side, hearing that sound, after looking back at the corpse for a moment, when I went to that door and tried to open it, the door was not opening even after I pulled it several times. It was clear that someone had latched it from the outside. Now, as soon as I realized this, for a moment I thought that maybe at this time of the night, some of the hospital staff had done a prank to me, that when I was coming down alone to do the postmortem in this morgue, someone came after me, and as soon as I was about to come to this fore, when the number person entered the room, he must have locked the door from the outside. As soon as this thing comes to mind, I knock on that door and shout very loudly, "Look, don't do this mischief to me at all. If I found out who you are, I'd eat your job." At that time, I said a lot of things in anger, but there was no response to anything I said from outside. And it would come only when someone was outside, because it was probably in my mind at that time that there was a hospital person outside who told me, "It's closed there." In fact, what actually happened was something else, because while I was knocking on that door, for a moment I heard the same scratching and doing strange things in my ears again. And this time, as soon as that voice comes, I feel that voice is coming from behind me very closely. Now, as soon as this thing is felt, suddenly there is silence in the whole room, because for so long I was knocking on the door again and again with my hands and screaming to open the door. Was then as soon as I felt this thing, I became completely calm, and as soon as I calmed down, the level of fear inside my mind had increased so much that now I did not even have the courage to look back. That night, despite being a science student, for the first time in my life, I was feeling that ghostly feeling. And with that feeling of fear, when I slowly turned my neck backwards, I could see that at that time the woman's corpse was lying on top of that stretcher. The fingers of the hands are running over that stretcher, and the long nails on top of those fingers were the sound of those nails scratching that stretcher. Now, looking at this thing, I think, how can the fingers of a corpse move in this way, because this woman is dead? and dead. For this reason it has been kept in the mortuary here. But while thinking about this, when my attention was drawn to his nails, I was stunned to see his nails, because the woman who was lying in front of me as a corpse, in that appearance, she looked about 24 to 25 years old. But even at such a young age, the nails on the fingers of his hands were absolutely rotten. As if for the last several years, he had not cut those nails with the fingers of his hands, and as if there was no life in those nails, due to which they had rotted in that way. But now the nails are no matter what. But what was most surprising was how the fingers of a corpse were moving on their own. And if the fingers were moving, it clearly meant that the woman was not dead, but maybe she... And yet, the fingers of his hand are moving. So this thing can happen only in one condition, that if a person has been dead for 2 to 3 days and his muscles inside his corpse have become stiff. But looking at the corpse of this woman, it does not seem at all that it has been 2 to 3 days since she died. And even if the fingers stiffen or any other part of the body stiffens, it does not move as much as at that time the woman's fingers repeatedly touched that structure with his nails. The structure was scratched. But at the same time, the other thing that was happening was that there was a strange crying sound coming from the woman's mouth. That voice was quite muffled. But still, I wanted to confirm whether this voice is coming from her throat or from somewhere else. And to confirm this thing, I go a little closer to that corpse and slowly move closer to his face and try to listen to that sound by turning my ear towards his mouth. But as I leaned down towards his face, hit the eyes of the woman, which was sticking all the way up and looked exactly like a white egg, suddenly open. And with the opening of those eyes, the face that was in front of me till now, of a beautiful and 24 to 25-year-old dead girl, suddenly changes into a very rotten corpse, as if the corpse has been lying there for the last several years. But the scariest thing that happened was that, as soon as the face of that corpse changed, suddenly his hand came over my shoulder and he grabbed my neck from behind. With this thing happening, the corpse automatically comes close to my mouth and screams so loudly that the horrible scene was enough to bring me a heart attack in an instant. But still, I don't know why, I did not die at that time, even after such a scary and horrible scene happened in front of my eyes. However, I was so scared that along with the woman's scream, a scream came out of my mouth in fear. But as soon as I scream, the corpse falls again on top of that structure. But this time, after falling down, he came back to that young woman does not change as a woman. Rather, she lives as the same rotten corpse that had suddenly turned into a very terrifying form. And with this thing happening, there was such a terrible smell inside that room that it was very difficult for me to breathe even for a minute. And with this thing, I was now feeling a lot of burning sensation on the back of my neck, as if someone had bitten me from behind or a sharp object hit on my neck. When I felt this thing, I rubbed my neck with one of my hands. I look at it from the back, and as soon as I touched my neck from the back, my whole hand was stained with blood. As soon as I saw this thing, I understood that my neck had been cut from the back. At the same time, when my eyes went to the hand of the corpse with which he had grabbed my neck from behind, I saw that there was blood on the very sharp and rotten nails on that hand. I mean, when he grabbed my neck from behind, so much I was so gripped that those sharp nails of his sank inward into my neck. Now, that horrible and scary scene in front of my eyes, along with that unbearable smell spread in that room and the unbearable pain that I was now feeling very fast, when all this happened together, I did not understand how this could happen. But then suddenly, the sound of a woman laughing echoed in the whole room. And at the time when the sound of that laugh was echoing in that room, the corpse lying on top of the structure was not moving at all. Now, if that corpse was not making any movement from there, then whose sound was that laughing? I did not understand it at the time. But by then, I understood that if I stayed here even for a moment, I could die at any time. That's why I rushed back to that door in a hurry, and as soon as I reached that door and tried to open it, that door opened in a flash. However, as soon as this thing happens, I was quite surprised that the door, which was not opening even after I had pulled it for so long, how suddenly did it open? But at that time, there was no time to think so much about all these things. That's why I quickly leave room number 4 and start running up the stairs. But as soon as I started to climb up the stairs, someone had gripped one of my legs badly from below, and as soon as I felt this thing, before I could look back, I was very angry.
There was a terrible blow, as if whoever had grabbed my leg had pulled me very badly, and as soon as that thing happened, I fell on the top of those stairs, and while falling, I fell on my face, due to which I got a lot of injuries on my head and face. But as soon as I was hit on the head due to falling on my head on those stairs in such a terrible way, my head suddenly started spinning completely, and I started feeling very dizzy. At that time, I felt as if I was going to faint in a short time. But then I realized that as soon as I fell down there, someone had grabbed that leg of mine again and started pulling me back very fast. And whoever was pulling me backwards was making a strange sound while pulling me. For example, a very old or middle-aged person who has no life in him tries to lift or pull something heavier than himself. So at that time, the way his mouth comes out of his mouth on its own, the same sound at that time, whoever it was, I was pulling out of his mouth, but at that time I didn't have the courage to look back and see who was pulling me. But then there is one more thing, that from those stairs to that room number 4, whoever was dragged me there after a lot of effort. But as soon as I reach the threshold of that number 4 room, I am pulled inward with such a jerk and as fast as if I had been pulled by a human being. No, but a machine has pulled inwards. And as soon as I pull inwards, that door also closes again immediately. The only thing I heard was the sound of that door closing for the last time. And as soon as I heard that sound, because I had a head injury, my eyes closed, and I fainted right there. I don't know anything about what happened to me after that, but when I opened my eyes, I saw that I was admitted inside the same hospital where I used to work, and 2 or 4 next to me, the doctor and the rest of the hospital staff, stood up. But as soon as I opened my eyes, I get up and try to run away, because for a moment I felt that I was lying on top of the same structure inside the morgue on which the woman's body was lying. But then the doctor stops me there, and after a few moments, I also understand that I am not at that place anymore. But I still couldn't believe it. In fact, I felt that I might be dreaming in an unconscious state. In which I have come out of that morgue and come upstairs to the hospital. But to believe this, I look at myself with a knife to avoid everyone's eyes, and as soon as I cut myself off, I was convinced that I had really come up. Now that this thing happened, I would be able to ask the rest of the people something. Even before that, the same people start asking me, "What happened to you and how did you faint inside that morgue?" So when they asked me this, I told them that a terrible accident happened to me in that room number 4. As soon as I said this, I told them everything that had happened to me. But after hearing that from my mouth, all the people of them become very serious at first and then start laughing loudly. Now, I didn't understand why they were laughing that way at that time. But then one of the doctors says, "What are you talking about? That number 4 morgue has been too past many. It has been closed for years, and you also found us in an unconscious state, not in room number 4, but in room number 3, next to the corpse of which you went for post-mortem." Now, as soon as they told me this, I did not believe them, and that is why I started arguing with them that door number 4 was completely open and that the body of a woman had just come inside it. Maybe you guys don't know that. That's why you should open that door with number 4.
Now, even after I said this, none of them were ready to believe me. That's why I somehow get up from there and tell those people that if you don't believe me, then you can come with me again. However, because of what happened to me while saying this, I was afraid that the same thing might happen to me again. But now I had so many people with me, that's why I wasn't so afraid of that. That's why I took those people with me and went down those stairs. When I reached the basement where the morgue was built, inside which there were 4 rooms, my eyes were torn when I looked at the door with number 4 in front. Because that door was made of all the same chains and other things as before, and the spider webs were also so badly placed on it that it did not seem that this door had been open for the last several years. Seeing this, I could not believe what happened to me here some time ago. Was it all a reality or a nightmare? But no matter what anyone said, I could not forget it, nor could it be considered a nightmare. But then I remember one thing, that when the woman's corpse tried to attack me, she grabbed my neck from behind. And as soon as I remember this, when I put my hand on my neck at the back, someone had already put a bandage on my back neck. I mean, there were actually expressions on the back of my neck. So that means whatever happened to me was not an illusion but a reality. And that's what I started explaining to them. Look, I have a scar on the back of my neck. This is because of the sharp nails of the same woman, because he grabbed my neck badly. Now that day, this thing happened. But after that, the in charge of that hospital sent me on leave to rest for a long time. But as soon as I left for my house in the morning after that night, when I started the car, I felt like this. It felt like there was someone else in the car with me at that moment. And whoever it was, he was sitting in the back seat. But when I turned to the back seat, it was completely empty. There was no one there. As soon as I see this thing, I say to myself that maybe because of what happened to me, I have such a delusion in my mind that that woman is still around me. Thinking of this, I take my car out of there and take it towards my house. But then while driving on the highway, suddenly the inside of my car is a mirror on the front side to look at the rear seat. When I looked at that mirror, I was completely stunned when I looked at that mirror, and in a second of fear, sweat started dripping from my forehead. Because at that time, I could see the face of a woman in that mirror, which was completely stained with blood, and at the same time, her skin was like the previous many. The road has been rotten for years. At that time, only that horrible eye of his and the side of his eyes were visible. As soon as I suddenly hit the brakes, I felt that whoever was sitting in the back had come forward and hit my seat, and along with hitting the seat, he had hit my shoulder and head a little bit, because I felt a push from the back. But as soon as this thing happened, I didn't have the courage to look back. That's why I opened the gate of the car and get out of the car. Then, after getting down when I was in the back seat, looking through the mirror, there was no one in the car. Now that I see this thing, I open the door of the back seat with my hands trembling, and as soon as I open the gate of the back seat, a very horrible smell hits my nose. That is, I feel a strange smell. But after opening the gate, I didn't see anyone in the back seat. But the part of the back seat as well as the rear of the front driving seat and the place where I was in the mirror just a while ago, the scary woman appeared to be sitting. There were a lot of blood splatters there, as if she had just disappeared from this car. But if really there was no woman there, then how did those blood splatters come there? I didn't understand it at the time, but before I can understand anything, the front of my car suddenly catches fire. Now when I see that fire, at first I get very nervous. But then, with a little courage, the fire extinguisher packet kept inside my car set on fire. I try to extinguish, and in a short time, the fire is extinguished. But after extinguishing the fire, when I open the front bonnet, my eyes are dazzled. Because there was neither any smoke inside the bonnet of the car nor anything else that could be seen to understand that the fire was here. I was just opening my bonnet to see that my gaze fell for a moment through the front mirror and into the car. So I feel like there's still someone sitting in the back seat. Now when you see that thing,
This time I'm not afraid. Rather, I have a little courage and think in my mind that whatever will happen will be seen. And as soon as I think so, I quickly head to the back seat. So whoever he was suddenly disappears from there. Now, when all these things started happening, I did not understand at all whether what was happening to me was a reality, or because of such a terrible accident happening to me, my mind is automatically creating such things that make me feel like these things are happening to me. Now think like that. Later I explained to myself that maybe something similar is happening to me. That's why I sit back in the driving seat and start the car and get home. But at that time, what had happened to me was taking over my science mind, and perhaps there was a lot more terrible to happen to me. Actually, after reaching home, first of all, I take a bath and then start cooking and eating on my own, because I am telling you all here that I had reached home. But in reality, there was no house but a rented house, because my whole family lived in another place, and I had rented that house because of my duty here. However, I was also allotted quarters, but I never liked living in quarters. That's why I bought my own personal house, where there was the comfort of everything. Now, after cooking and eating that day, I quietly go inside my room and sleep. But after some time of sleeping, I feel as if someone is standing near my bed, and he is grabbing my toe and caressing it lightly, caressing it as well as pulling it with jerks in between. Now, that I felt this thing, at first I thought that maybe it was a delusion of my mind. Thinking of this, I put a blanket over my feet in my sleep and turn over and fall asleep. But after some time of sleeping, I hear a voice in my ears, after hearing which a terrible fear arises in my mind, that with that fear, both my eyes jerk at the same time they open in. Because that voice was not any other voice, but the same voice that I felt inside that morgue. That is the same scratching and moaning in a strange way. It was as if someone was scratching something, and along with that the sound of moaning was now heard by me inside my house in my bedroom. And as soon as I heard that sound for the first time, both my eyes opened in such a way that it was as if I had heard the sound of someone screaming, not the sound of scratching and moaning. Because that even faint voice inside my mind had created so much fear that now hearing it was an alarm bell for me. But as soon as I opened my eyes, one of the things that happened to me was that it was around 1 p.m. when I went to bed after cooking. And now I must have had only 1 to 1.5 hours to sleep. But when I opened my eyes, I felt as if it was night, because the room was completely immersed in darkness, and the faint light that comes from behind the curtains above the windows during the day is now gone. It wasn't coming at all, and I could hear the same sounds as the sounds of small insects and crickets at night. That is, overall, I felt like a night out. It's as if it's night. Now, realizing this, I think that I have barely slept for an hour and a half, so how did it suddenly become night? Or I was so sleepy that I didn't even know when it turned from day to night. I was just thinking about it. That's when the blanket I had put on top of me slowly starts to slide downwards, as if someone was pulling it down in front of the bed. For a moment, I tried to hold back the blanket, but whoever was pulling it, it was pulling with such force that even after holding it by my hand, the blanket does not stop near me. With this, let me tell you here that I did not close his door while sleeping in the bedroom. Rather, it was slightly open because the main door on the outside.
I always slept with it closed, and I used to leave the bedroom door open. Now from one side the blanket was slowly sliding downwards, and then suddenly I felt that someone had moved from here to there in front of my bedroom door. Now as soon as I feel this thing for a moment, my eyes move away from that blanket to the front door. But even after staring at it for a long time, whoever went from here to there does not come back. Now this thing for a moment, I think that maybe I'm starting to have the same kind of nightmares with my eyes open. Or am I feeling things that don't really exist? Just as I was trying to pull the blanket back towards me and go to sleep, I heard a third voice coming from outside the door of my room. That is, the two sounds I was hearing so far were the sound of scratching something and one of moaning. Besides, now I hear it, I think someone is walking inside my house. And while walking, he probably has anklets on his feet, because at that time I could hear Payal's claiming sound from outside my bedroom door. And after hearing that sound, now my attention goes back to the door of the room right in front of my bed. And once again, when I look at the door with a keen gaze, I see that now the sound of Payal's chamam chamam is coming very close to the door of my room. And then I saw it. I see a woman dressed entirely in a bridal dress walking from the other side of the door of my room to the front. Just a while ago I felt a person walking very fast, but this time the woman who was there walks very slowly from one side to the other in front of that door, and while passing in front of that door, she turns her neck slightly towards me and looks at me first. Then her neck becomes crooked in a strange way, and along with becoming crooked, she looks at me in a very horrible way. She starts smiling, and as soon as I see the woman doing all this, my eyes are torn with fear when I see her face. Because at that time the woman in front of me in those bride's clothes was none other than the woman I had found lying as a corpse on top of that structure inside the morgue number 4. But then shortly afterwards, when he grabbed my neck, it turned into a very horrible and scary rotten corpse. But now that I found the woman inside my house, I understood that whoever she was, she has not left me till now, and she has come with me inside my house. I was just thinking about these kinds of things in my mind when she slowly walked forward, looking at me in that way. But at that time I was sitting on top of that bed and completely numb. Because you also feel that you're sitting on top of a bed of a room inside a whole empty house, and there is absolutely dense darkness all around. There is no other person in the house besides you. And during this time you see an unknown woman inside your house in front of your eyes, which you have seen in a terrible form some time ago. And it doesn't even matter if you have seen him in a terrible form or not, but still if you see someone other than you inside an empty house, then for a moment you will feel a strange fear of who this person is. Whether it's a woman or a man, it doesn't matter much, but all those things happening to me at the same time when I was watching. So I didn't know what to do. At that moment there was a strange silence all around, and in that silence I could hear only 3 voices. That strange moaning sound. The second is the sound of scratching something in a very strange way, and the third is the sound of that woman's anklet. But as the woman was moving away from my room, I could hear Payal's voice moving far away from me. So along with that, the sound of moaning and scratching something started to increase, and whoever was scratching something slowly at first, he was now scratching her very fast.
And as that voice started increasing, I realized that that voice was not coming from anywhere else, but from under the same bed on which I was sitting at that time. However, I was not even sitting at the time. In fact, I was in a position in which I was neither fully lying nor sitting properly. However, at that time I wanted to get up and see who was under my bed, but a strange fear gripped me. Even though I wanted to, I couldn't move any limbs. At that time only my pupils were moving, and my breathing was going away. Other than that, I couldn't move anything else. But then suddenly, the door of my room closes automatically with a jerk in the same way. The way when I went inside that morgue number 4 last night. As soon as I got closer to that corpse, that door was closed very fast. Now with the sound of the door of that room closing, I get a strange tingling sensation, and I feel my body a little too much. I am able to shake. And as soon as I am able to move my body, I slowly move my head to the side of my bed and go down to try to see where that sound is coming from. So as soon as I leaned down, a very horrible face came towards me lying upside down from under that bed. That is, whoever she was lying on the floor on her back, and his face was right upwards, that is towards my face. And he came out in front of me, sliding right in front of me with a jerk. It comes. Now as soon as she comes to whoever was in front of me, I can see that she is the same woman who just went from one side to the other through the door of my room a few seconds ago. But when she had gone out, how did she suddenly come here? In that 1 second I was thinking that suddenly the woman screams so fiercely that her scream echoes in my entire room. Also at that time there will be a distance of barely 1 foot between his face and mine. And when she screams, while screaming, such a terrible rot comes out of her mouth that for a second I stopped breathing. But now when I saw him so close to my face and screaming in such a horrible way, I screamed badly out of fear. And before I can do anything, along with screaming, the next moment when the woman starts laughing after looking at me, blood starts coming out of her mouth with that horrible laugh, and the rest of her face, he was covered in blood. And there was a lot of blood on the floor as well. I was just watching what was happening when suddenly the door of my room opens with a slight shrapnel sound, and as soon as the door of my room opens, I see that the same woman is standing on top of the door of my room, who had gone out a while ago, and now she can see under my bed too, but this time she was not standing there like an ordinary woman, but in a strange way like a spider. She was walking towards me.
and the hair on her head at that time was completely scattered. Her face had also become as rotten as the corpse that had changed from a beautiful woman in that morgue to a very horrible and rotten corpse after I was shackled. Now seeing the same girl in 2 to 3 places inside my room at the same time, my mind had completely stopped working. And before I could think or understand anything, the women walking like spiders came very close to my bed. She climbs on top of my bed and sits right on top of me. But at that moment I have a little courage and say to him in a stuttering voice, "Who are you and what do you want from me? What have I done to you? Let me go." Now as soon as I said this to her, both of her eyes started to go completely round and round. And along with this thing, she says to me in a strange, scary voice that I want liberation. Till this day I was imprisoned inside that morgue, but you got me out of there.
It worked. But even after coming out, I am not able to get salvation. I've been rotting there for the last several years. Neither did anyone cremate me, nor did anyone take revenge on the person who killed me. Now when he tells me this, I tell him, "But I didn't do anything wrong to you. Leave me alone." So as soon as I say this, she tells me that you have to do one of my things. Otherwise, I will do to you the same way I have done to the rest of the people. Now as soon as he said this, I would say in a slightly stuttering voice, "What job is that?" So she tells me that you have to liberate me. Whoever I have put to death till date, I have asked him to liberate me, but no one listened to me and did not do as I said. That is why I was forced to take him to the same place where I have been taking the people before him. And I am asking you the same thing, that either liberate me or get ready to die a painful death. Now that he said this, I was afraid of him. In a very hushed voice, I say, "What do I have to do to get rid of you?" So she tells me that you have to go inside the same basement at exactly 12 o'clock on the night of the new moon, and you have to go inside that morgue number 4 to free me. But I will not get salvation just like that, but you will have to do more to liberate me, because I died as a bride. That is why my farewell should also be as a bride. For this you need to put the bride's dress and makeup in a basket. All the belongings will have to be taken with you inside that number 4 morgue. And there you will have to light a candle near my clothes and light a fire in those clothes, and after that put all the cosmetics of a bride in that fire. After that you just have to say one line there, that from today you get salvation, and from here your funeral ends. As soon as you do this thing, you get out of there quietly after you do this, because if you accidentally try to look back, I'll be forced to take you with me." Now as soon as he said this, suddenly I felt a very strong shock, and I felt as if nothing had happened to me. And after opening my eyes, I saw that it was not night, but evening at that time. But whatever happened to me, whether it was a nightmare or something else, but I couldn't deny that. That's why when the night of the new moon came, I went inside that hospital again that night. I'm going. Although the leave given to me by the in charge of the hospital was not completed by that time, I still go there at night on some pretext, and as soon as I reach that basement, I see that the door of that number 4 morgue was open on its own that night. Seeing that door open, I quietly go inside with all the things that the spirit of the bride told me about. But as soon as I reached inside that room, I saw the view inside. For a moment my steps were starting to retract from the back, because the last time I saw the corpse of a woman lying on top of a structure inside it. Now the same corpse of the same woman was hanging from the fan inside the morgue. But even while hanging, his eyes were wide open, as if she was still alive and looking at me. But somehow, with courage, I go to that corpse, and putting all the stuff there as he told me, doing exactly as the bride did, I set the clothes on fire, which I took with me. After doing this thing, he put all his belongings in that fire and say only one thing there, that your last rites are completed with this, and from today you are free from the 4 walls of this morgue. As soon as I turned around and started going back to that door, the door of that morgue suddenly closed once again.
And when I tried to open it, despite my best efforts, it did not open, and only then did I get close to my ear. I hear a whisper, and at the same time I feel as if someone is standing very close to me in the back. However, realizing this, I understood that it was none other than the corpse of the same bride who had just been hanged from that fan a while ago. Now she comes very close to my ear and tells me that, "Dr. Babu, this series is still not going to end. You are only able to escape from here alive because you have bid farewell to a bride on your behalf. But in this morgue, there are still many brides who wait for their groom every time. And today, you have saved your life by getting a bride to attain salvation. But in the coming time, the souls of these brides will continue to wander in this way inside this morgue house, and the lives of the people who come here will continue to go in this way." After hearing so many voices, I could hear not just one woman from behind, but many women screaming, shouting, and crying very loudly. Like that entire morgue, for many brides, be filled with souls. But then suddenly, that door opens automatically, and as soon as that door opens, I come out walking very fast. But by that time I was drenched in sweat, and my breathing was very fast. But a few days after this accident, I got my transfer done from there, and after that, the spirit of that bride also left me. But even today, when I try to tell someone about all these things, people think I am making up a fabricated story. At the same time, there is one more thing, that I am in a profession in which there is no recognition of ghosts, witches. Even if I try to tell people this, people will think I am crazy and say that despite being a doctor, I am saying such things. However, I was trying very hard to tell people everything that had happened to me, but I couldn't find a way. So that I can convey to the people that something like this can actually happen. But then I found Baina Bai's channel, and after listening to his stories, when I talked to him, because I also have a story of a very terrible incident that happened to me. So today, I have been able to reach you about this incident that happened to me. Although I cannot reveal the name of that hospital and the place where that hospital is located, believe me, even after I return from there, many people have lost their lives inside that morgue. And whenever I talk to the old staff there, every time I talk to them once in 2-4 months, I get to hear that, again, a man's corpse with that number 4. The corpse has been found lying outside the house, which is completely stained with blood, and is in such a condition that there is not even a single cloth on that corpse. But what is surprising is that whenever a woman, that is a nurse, goes inside that morgue, nothing happens to her. To date, all the people who have gone to that morgue have been to the morgue. Now, what is the reason behind this? You can understand this very well.
So friends, this was our story today. How did you like the story? Please do tell me by commenting in the comment box. And also, those who haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please subscribe to the channel. Take care of yourself and your family. I will meet you soon with a new story. Thank you.